It's my DraftKings hockey picks for Wednesday, February 12th, and we're starting right now. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Holkamaniacs YouTube channel. If this is your first time here and you want to become a more profitable DraftKings player, start now by subscribing to the channel, but make sure you hit that bell so you don't miss anything along the way. And better yet, if you want to get into that drawing for 20 DK bucks that I do each and every week, make sure you drop into the comments your favorite stack for this 3-game slate. Holkamaniacs, about last night. Nathan MacKinnon did get there for us at 8,500 on DraftKings, so you had to pay that premium to get those 2 assists and 6 peripheral stats, but definitely think that it was worth the investment yesterday. One of the things that I thought was really interesting about the slate was if Connor McDavid was going to be ruled out, and now we know that he's going to be out for a couple of weeks, was it still viable to go after Draisaitl and that top line? And I know there's a bunch of people in the Discord that still went that direction, thankfully. We got Draisaitl at 13.3% ownership. Obviously, he has 4 points. Puts in a goal, 4 shots, just an elite play in terms of the data. And I think a lot of people got scared off him, what Draisaitl will be able to do without McDavid, but he's been getting it done at even strength this year as well. So I guess in turn, Yamamoto on his line still just trucking along, one of those guys that has been an elite performer at the American Hockey League level. 2 goals, 4 shots, adds a block as well at 4,800. Was kind of a tougher price tag to get to if you were trying to pay all the way down at winger yesterday, which I know is a popular roster construction, but just the correlation you get there with Draisaitl, and as soon as we knew that he was going to be taking McDavid's spot on the first power play unit, it was basically a lock to kind of cash in on that stack, at least on some tournament lineups yesterday. It wasn't all good though. Blake Coleman at 6K, he was probably a little bit overpriced. We talked about that in the video yesterday, but his peripheral stats were elite until last night, just 2 shots. So that was disappointing. Clefbaum did get the shot block bonus, but at 6,400, you probably want a little bit more from him at 7.4. He definitely ruined some of my Yamamoto and Draisaitl stacks, unfortunately. Esa Lindell was just a pure punt play. Didn't get there on his peripherals, one of the worst peripheral games he's had in quite some time. So that was unfortunate. 3,900 didn't kill you, though. Groo Bauer at 8,500 was the goaltender that we talked about yesterday. I did think it was one of the safer bets on the entire slate. You guys know me. I pay up for goaltender more than most people do. But getting that win and the shutout, 33.8 DK points at 9.6% ownership in a game that we loved, Colorado. I thought that was a decent way to spend salary yesterday. Blackwood didn't end up playing. So one of the things that typically I'm fine just playing the backup. I'm just not a big Domingue fan overall. I definitely have some biases there from his time in Arizona. So Blackwood was the one that was the hot goalie for the New Jersey Devils. So I guess ended up putting a different goaltender into my main teams. And shout out the Discord, by the way. And we had a couple people in the chat that I definitely want to shout out here on today's video. Jason Zucker, obviously 3,900 with Sidney Crosby in his debut for the Penguins. Definitely think that he was an interesting play at that price point. Clary24, shout out to him. Denkope actually had a really nice goaltender call at 7,300. So that was one of the guys you probably needed to get to the top of GPPs if you didn't end up going the Groo Bauer route. And shout out Blackburn. Darren Helm, $2,900 winger. Again, we talked about if you needed that value winger, getting to Helm, like he was one of those guys that in terms of late news, that's something we talk about a lot in the Discord as well. He was someone that was ruled onto the first line very late yesterday. So if you got on Helm, shout out to you. I do think that he ended up being around 2% owned as well. So that was a great call by Blackburn. Dvorak, shout out Cody Huffman. We might have to get a hashtag Cody Huffman in the chat now that we have Steve out of the NHL streets, but Cody Huffman's like the new NHL version of Steve. Was talking about Dvorak during kind of when we were all building our teams yesterday. He didn't end up playing him, I believe, and then he scores like 1 minute in. I don't think he really did much the rest of the game, but it was still funny that Dvorak got there right away. And then Mr. Educational, one of the new guys to the Discord, he Chicago 2 stack was kind of his big stand yesterday, and obviously that really worked out for him. A lot of really sharp conversation going on there, so hopefully I'll see some new people in there today as well. Small 3-game slate today, but I will say that these are the type of small slates that I do really like when right away we definitely have one game that we could be targeting that should be up in pace relative to the other 2. So let's work our way through this data sheet and go a little bit quicker today. Obviously, the game that I'm talking about is Vancouver and Chicago. So Vancouver is at home. I guess the one thing you could say negatively about this situation is both of these teams, not elite Corsi 4 teams, but Chicago, we do know, produces a lot of high danger opportunities. So that's something we were always paying attention to. Vancouver's allowing the most Corsi on the slate over the past 25 games as well. So definitely middle of the pack in terms of their high danger against, but I definitely love Chicago tonight and the volume that there will be in that side of the game, but the other side as well. So I mentioned that this is the game that I'll be most heavily attracted to overall, but definitely think Vancouver is interesting as well, especially because they're at home, much better team total, of course, but Chicago is just a team we've been targeting the entire season in terms of targeting teams that are allowing a lot of high danger scoring chances against. So 21.6% of those scoring chances are in the high danger areas. So I definitely think that Vancouver, there's typically one of those, I struggle with Vancouver personally, guys like Pettersson, because there's just, they're always priced up a little bit relative to their peripheral stats, but the upside could be there for them to get there in more of like a high efficiency spot today on a smaller slate. So definitely all over Vancouver and this matchup against Chicago. Outside of that, guys, I'm not super interested in any full stacks. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of people on Boston today. Here's my concerns with Boston. Like, of course, they're at home. We know we have that top line, Pastrnak, Bergeron, and Marchand. Marchand, again, another guy that always seems like he's a little bit overpriced relative to his peripherals. But let's look at the matchup versus Montreal. Montreal has allowed the second fewest Corsi against on the slate. It is neutral in terms of a high danger, so I wouldn't hate you for rolling out a Boston stack today. I think I prefer them in one-off situations, but mostly because they're just not generating a ton of high danger overall on the offensive side. I think it just goes over-owned, I should say, for a 3-game slate. I think I prefer to get, like I said, I think there's some decent one-off opportunities if you did want to go with like a Pastrnak one-off or a cheaper one-off as well, or maybe you just want to play the goaltender. I think that's totally fine. That's where I'm going to be getting my Boston exposure today. A couple other spots that I think could go over-owned. I don't think Montreal is going to be, or LA will be very popular, but I think a lot of people might go to Calgary today. Just because of what LA has done as a team recently. They are giving up the fewest amount of Corsi. Neutral matchup in terms of their high danger against, which is a little bit, I guess, in their favor. But on the road, I don't know. I think that there's better options in Calgary tonight. Again, a lot of those guys are priced up as well. None of them were really hitting my trend. So I'm going to really kind of focus in on this high-paced game today. I think we can move on. Let's start with the center position as we always do, and you'll see the guy right in the background here. I think it's one of the bigger decisions on the slate. Do you pay up for Patrice Bergeron? Obviously, it's a tough price tag, 8K on DraftKings, 7,600 on FanDuel. Really tough to actually say he's probably not the most consistent centerman option that we do have today. 94th percentile shot prediction. He is in the 93rd percentile in shot attempts over the last 15 days. And 92nd percentile power play shots as well. So that's something that I'm always looking for, really trying to get those power play shooters, guys that most recently are being featured on the man advantage. Definitely think that he is only in the 84th percentile shots plus blocks, which is probably, it's a decent number for most guys, right? But for Bergeron, that's lower than it normally is. So I do think that his price might be a little bit too much. But again, I think he's a reasonable one-off. I think all like Bergeron, Pastrnak, those guys are like one-off scenarios for me today. I don't see myself fully stacking up Boston 1, but I think the slate could come down to at the center position if you're going to play Bergeron or if you're going to play Elias Pettersson. So Pettersson's only 800 cheaper on DraftKings, and definitely think his peripherals carry a lot more volatility, but he's also someone that has a lot of upside in the best matchup and I guess the best game environment overall on the slate. And I do think it's a pretty thin center position today. So if you did want to pay down, I think that you could go to someone like Kirby Dach in Chicago. Again, targeting that game. He's 3,100 on DraftKings, 3,700 on FanDuel. 85th percentile power play shots over the last 15 days. So I like to see that from a young kid and someone that, again, 72nd percentile shot attempts. It's not elite by any means. Like, it's a tougher position today, but if you want to pay down, I think just getting access to Patrick Kane, both at even strength and on the power play at 3,100, I'm not going to overcomplicate that. I'm definitely going to have some Kirby Dach today and that whole first line, or Chicago 2, I guess you can say. In terms of the matchup, Vancouver highest Corsi against over the last 25 on the slate, and Chicago does have the highest high danger chances, 4% on the slate. So when the pieces come together, I tend not to fight it too much. You guessed it, the winger position. We're going to talk about Patrick Kane today. He is 7,900 on DraftKings. Paying a premium for a winger is not something I always try and do, just because they're not going to give you that chance to get the block bonus typically. But on a smaller slate, certainly okay with going there. And I think that this is a fantastic spot for Kane. 97th percentile shot prediction, 95th percentile shot attempts over the last 15 days, and 85th percentile power play shots over that same time period. So an elite shooter, you got to pay for it, but I definitely think that he's one of the better options you could go to today at the high end. 63.7% of the team power play time over the last 3 games does have Patrick Kane involved in that combination. Only 10.1% for the next unit without Kane. So he's going to be out there like basically the entire power play time. If they do get a bunch of time today, he's going to be heavily involved. They are at Vancouver, like I mentioned. Another stat that we didn't talk about before, but Corsi allowed for Vancouver has actually spiked from 59.5, which is relatively average on the season, to 62.7. So they're giving up more volume lately as well, which just makes me like Kane even more. I honestly think he's the best play on both sites today. If I had to just go by raw points, I think he's going to be heavily owned. So you're not going to be getting cute with Kane by any means, but he might be a guy you have to have. In cash games, I definitely think he's a building block for me today. Zak Mcewan for Vancouver. Again, let's try and find a little bit of value today, right? So he's 2,500 on DraftKings, 3K on FanDuel. Stone Min. 10 games in the NHL this season. He only has 2 goals and 1 assist over that time period. In 20 games in the American League this season, 5 goals, 6 assists. So he's only about a half point per game in the American League. So I don't think this Mcewan guy is like a stud by any means. He does trail Reed Boucher, who had 4.3 shots per game. At 2.7 shots per game in the American League, I like to see a little bit more from a guy like this, but he is Stone Min in the best game environment on the slate by far. So he's in the top 6. He's going to be playing on that first line with Bo Horvat, and we'll have to keep an eye on that. If he ends up playing with Elias Pettersson or something like that, definitely think he's an even better play, but still think that's a great place to grab savings. Again, the winger position, I would love to grab some value, and I'm okay doing it with Mcewan. Hopefully he ends up lucking into assist or something like that, and you don't really have to get there based on peripherals alone. At the defense position, honestly, guys, which Vancouver defenseman do you play today? That could be the difference. It really could. So let's start with Quinn Hughes. So we know that this rookie has been fantastic on the score sheet, 5,300 on DraftKings. He's a little bit expensive relative to his peripherals, 89th percentile time on ice, 87th percentile power play shots over the last 15 days. And over that same time period, only 72nd percentile in shot attempts. So like that's an elite number for 5,300. We look at these defensemen all the time. And it's a little bit scary. It's the same thing as Pettersson. It's just he doesn't block shots, and I would love to see my centerman block shots. And bottom 10th percentile for Quinn Hughes, that's tough when so much of the DraftKings scoring is based on hitting that block bonus at the defense position. So it's really if he doesn't get there with a couple points tonight, you might be carrying lower upside than you realize. But cheaper access to Elias Pettersson is something that I'm really interested in today. The Vancouver power play 1, they will correlate together. But if you ended up in a roster construction where you couldn't quite get to Pettersson, I do think that just targeting this game is something that I want to have. I want to have shares, right? So in terms of some other defensemen, again, like I mentioned, there's probably 4 guys in play for Vancouver. Tyler Myers is the one. He is on the second power play unit. He's 4,500. He was popping in trends a couple days ago. He's not anymore, but 96 percentile shots plus blocks. Again, like the safety for Myers is reasonable. 84th percentile time on ice over the last 15 days. 81st percentile blocks over the past month. And again, I mentioned it, but this slate could legit come down to which Vancouver D-man you play and what roster construction it leads you to. So the other guys that I would say are in play, Troy Stecher, 2,500. If anyone's wondering, this Penticton Bees jersey behind me, that's where I played juniors. Stecher was actually a 16-year-old on my team when I was a 20-year-old assistant captain. So I know Stetch well. He's still got a muffin back there at the point, but he does play a good amount of minutes. It's unfortunate that they picked up Tyler Myers this year, that they obviously got Quinn Hughes. So his ice time last year was scaled up compared to what it is now, but he's still someone that's going to give us peripheral. He's not as scared to shoot that muffin towards the net. It's probably not going to be going too fast, but love you, Stetch. Anyways, I think at 2,500 in this game environment, if you wanted a punt defenseman, you could do worse than Troy Stecher. And GPPs, I think Alex Edler is interesting. He's 4,400. He's not on the power play, but just someone else that is not scared to shoot the puck, and he's certainly going to block shots. Alex Edler is always going to be someone that is going to at least threaten for the block shot bonus. So honestly, these 4 guys, I could see having exposure to all of them today on the defense position. Let's wrap things up with goalie, and I guess what might be a little bit of a concern for most people is I haven't talked a ton about Boston today outside of Bergeron. I do think that if we wanted to give you guys another little bonus play on this short slate, I think Coyle is interesting if you can't get up to Bergeron the center position. But the guy that I am not scared about playing whatsoever today is Tuukka Rask. So obviously we have to keep track and see if he is going to be playing. Time of this recording, it is not a lock that Rask will be in, but I'd be fine going to Holka as well. 8,400 on DraftKings, paying up, 75th percentile team wins. Of course, I would love to see this team be on a little bit more of a run than they are, but it's still reasonable. And 95th percentile Vegas money line rating versus Montreal. Montreal is just not a good team, guys. So I would be shocked if Boston didn't at least get the win tonight. They do have they're facing a team that has the second lowest percent high danger chances for. The Kings, obviously, first in that area. Both these teams throw a lot of pucks on net from everywhere, not necessarily in the high danger. It's great for scoring in terms of racking up those saves. So I really like the idea of targeting Montreal. And Boston allows the most low danger chances. So that, again, the pieces fit. Second most high danger chances on the second fewest, high danger chances on the slate. So I definitely think that Rask is the one that you want to try and get to at 8,400. If you did want to go down a little bit, I could see going to Rittich for Calgary, but I'm just going to try and get to Rask. If you want to learn even more about how to be a profitable DraftKings player, make sure you hit the subscribe icon in the bottom right-hand corner now and come hang out with us in the Discord. This video goes up in the mornings. Definitely want to continue this conversation going in our community chat. I'll see you guys in there.